All right, welcome to another episode of the 24th Floor. If you didn't know, this is what I'm calling showdown week for high school football. You're talking about Houston and Collierville, Briarcrest at MUS, Memphis Central at Mumford, and of course, the biggest game, Southwind and Germantown.
They're calling it the Super Bowl, and yes, it has. It's been TikToks on TikToks from both fan bases hyping this game up. Undefeated Southwind on the road at Germantown, looking to stay perfect. It's arguably the two best teams on this side of the state, Ruben.
Yeah, so to help us break this down for this high school football week, we brought in the man, Wendell Shepard, in here from the Commercial Appeal. We appreciate you taking the time. You got all the high school knowledge, right?
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into it. Before we started, I showed you some of the TikToks that have been going on. This game, Southwind and Germantown, is hyped for real.
It really is. After the first few weeks of this season, and it became clear, these are two of the better teams around here. And I remember talking with some of the South coaches. I was like, it's a shame you guys won't play Germantown until the last week of the season because I was excited to see it then. And both teams have looked really good since then. And I'm really excited for this game.
So Wendell and I, we are always often talking on the sidelines. It seems like almost every game I'm at, he's at. And so, Wendell, let's just kind of let the audience in a little bit on kind of what we talk about. When you look at like Southwind and Germantown, like you said, or like we both have said, arguably two of the best teams. I kind of want to put you on the spot earlier. Who do you think the edge leans to going into this game?
I think I probably lean Southwind, and the reason for that, I guess, is looking at Germantown's two losses. Mumford this past week and DeSoto Central, I think, a month ago. Both teams that run the ball really well, and they gave up a lot of yards on the ground. And this is, Germantown plenty capable offensively of hanging with anyone. But Southwind is this year especially has been kind of a change from past years. Obviously, everyone knows Kelvin Perkins. He can throw the ball about as well as anyone in the state. But they run the ball really, really well, and that offensive line is dominant up front. And especially if weather impacts this game and it's muddy out there, I'd probably give Southwind the edge.
They play kind of like the Ravens. I've said that several times. Maybe it's just because of the colors. You know what I'm saying?
I think it's just because of the colors.
But Perkins plays a lot like Lamar. With them running the ball a lot, it reminds me of their, the Ravens running backs with Justice Hill, Derrick Henry, all those type of guys. So, I love the way Southwind plays, but it's just weird. This game is on a Thursday instead of a Friday.
Yeah.
I think it couldn't have worked out any better, because it's a Thursday game on the Halloween week, all the hype and all the attention. And to me, you're leaning Southwind, and I can definitely see why you would. They're undefeated, and they've beaten some really good people so far this year. Started off strong.
Briarcrest.
Los Ann, I believe they
we just had it. That was game of the week.
Win that game early, easy. But I feel like Germantown has something to prove.
Yeah.
That staff, those kids, those losses are not. They're not sitting pretty with Germantown.
Yeah, but especially this game right here that we got. When they went up against Mumford. To me, I thought Germantown was going to. I'll be honest, I thought Germantown was going to blow out Mumford. And maybe I'm not giving Mumford the proper respect because they run that wing T offense. They're just running the ball.
That's
so
hard to stop.
But they're predictable in a way. So I thought Germantown that they would have the method because it seemed like they answered the bell all season. But I think what I saw in that game, I feel like now Southwind is like, okay, this team, we can beat them. You know what I'm saying? So now I kind of feel like the wind is kind of out of the sails a bit for Germantown going into this matchup. And I think Southwind, this is an opportunity for them to show that they are the best team in the league.
So what's your take on Germantown?
I think one thing that'll be interesting to see in this game especially is Germantown, in the games I've covered of theirs this season, they can definitely control the clock. I remember I was at their game when they played Lausanne. They won a really close one in that game. But the last drive of that game, or the last couple of drives of that game, they were eating up 5, 6, 7 minutes going down the field. And they have plenty of explosive playmakers, Trayvon McGorry, Larry Johnson at running back.
That touchdown.
They can move down the field quickly if they want to, but they also have a good offensive line as well and a couple of good running backs that can control the game. So I would anticipate Gene Robinson's probably going to want to slow this game down, not let Southwind touch the ball very much. And I think just depending on how things bounce, if someone can get a turnover, Germantown's definitely not a long shot in this game at all. And I definitely think they could control the clock and get the ball last and win this one for sure.
What have you seen from their quarterback, Jordan Shelton? I mean, when we look at a lot of the quarterbacks in the area, it's usually the older guys, seniors. This kid is a sophomore, right?
Yeah, he is a sophomore.
You know what I'm saying? And for him to be QB1 of arguably, one of the best teams in the area, what have you seen from him, his development over the season?
He's really impressive. I saw him play once his freshman year. He was splitting time as a freshman, and he's physically impressive. He's 6'1". He has a great arm. As you saw in that Lausanne game, he had 75-yard pass. He's got a great arm. He runs the ball well. I think the most impressive thing has probably been his poise, and Gene Robinson will tell you the same thing. They've had a couple of games this year. They've beat good teams. They've beat Houston, Whitehaven, Lausanne, and all of those games have required some pretty intense drives late in the game to game-winning drives, and he's led them and has looked comfortable, made important throws in tight windows. So yeah, he's really impressive in many ways, and he's definitely going to be a name that we talk about for a while around here.
Let's keep that video rolling, actually, Leanna, if you don't mind, because that's going to be the Southwind quarterback. Let's take a look at some of that video. This is when they played Lausanne
in our first game of the
early
week.
in the season. Talk a little bit about Kelvin Perkins, because we just talked about Jordan Shelton, who we all know is extremely talented, especially at his age. Let's talk a little bit about Mr. Perkins as well.
I think, and I haven't been around Memphis high school football very long, but I think in the time I've been here, he's a one-of-one type player, and that he can just take over a game. If someone does beat that offensive line, gets in the backfield, you're probably not bringing him down.
Yeah.
He can evade tacklers, make throws, make plays with his arm, make plays with his feet. He's elusive running the ball.
There he is right
yeah, he's just really hard to stop, and I haven't seen anyone this season really stop him, even when they've played good teams. So I think he's a game changer, and especially once in this game this weekend in the playoffs, he's one of those types of players that can really make a difference when you have two evenly matched teams.
And it's funny because, looking at this game, you look at the highlights and you're thinking that Lausanne dominated Southwind, and it's just Lausanne just got out ahead early, but then the rest of this is all Southwind.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Perkins doing this thing where I think, what was the final score, 42-17 or something like that? So,
He just looks so comfortable in the pocket.
Yeah.
That's the pressure, and he just never looked like he didn't know what he wanted to do.
I'm telling you, he's like Lamar out there.
Yeah, and he's sneaky fast and physical runner, not afraid to take a hit, and he gives some hits at defensive back occasionally. I don't know if you guys have caught him out there on defense a few times this season, but
I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
he plays both ways.
He's a heck of a player. Not regularly, but that Briarcrest game, he came in second half, made a couple of tackles, important tackles too. So yeah, he's a heck of a player.
Now you bring up Briarcrest, and I know they're not in our game of the week, and we right now don't have any video for them that we can show to people. But just look at, this is nut up or shut up time. With this being the final week of the regular season, you got teams like Briarcrest, you got teams like Christian Brothers, you got teams like Lausanne, who we had there. Who else out there? Central and Mumford, we can talk on that. Who else out there have you been really keeping an eye on besides these two teams that will be in our game of the week?
I have not seen Munford play this season, but they've been completely dominant and impressive.
Roll that Munford video.
Had beat two really strong 6A teams in Whitehaven and Germantown, and that running game is really tough to stop. I know they've had some early playoff exits the last couple of years, and I'm sure they're going to be motivated to not let that happen. So I think they're a team that's going to be sticking around for a while. And Briarcrest, too, has been really impressive to me, especially after the season they had last year. Only won 4 games a season ago and returned a lot of the same guys and looked like a completely new outfit. Hudson Tucker's thrown nearly 30 touchdown passes this season. That defense has played well against some strong teams when they've needed to. And to me, a game they lost has probably been the most impressive performance they had, Brentwood Academy.
Yeah.
They lost 34-31, and I wasn't at that game, but looking through the notes and stats from that game, they dominated. Mm-hmm. It was just a pick six, a untimely fumble, and a couple other bad moments that let Brentwood Academy come out by 3 in that game. But they dominated one of the best teams in the state. So they'll have some very tough competition on the other side of the state in D2 AAA, but I think they can definitely make some noise in the playoffs.
Yeah, so as we continue to go through, who's some of the teams that maybe, like for us, we kind of think Houston. We had really high hopes for Houston, and maybe even Whitehaven might be one of those teams. Who are some of those teams that maybe you thought, man, this team is going to really dominate this year, and then maybe did not ever get out of the gate the way they needed to?
I would have to say Whitehaven is probably that team for me. I had ranked them really highly in the preseason, and they're still a really talented team.
Yeah.
The games they've lost have all been to great teams. They lost to, I believe, Southwind, Germantown, Innsworth.
Yeah, those are all good
those are
losses.
all really good teams. And I guess it's just that thing is like, I forget who said this, it's like to be the best, you got to beat the best. And they haven't done
I
that.
said that. Just
To beat the man, you got to beat the man. That was said by Ric Flair.
That's true.
Yeah.
No, and they have tons of talent, and Christopher Talley is going to be one of those players that no one's going to be able to stop in the playoffs. So I'm not counting them out at all. But I would say just as far as looking at win-loss records, where they're at now is probably not where I expected them to be. But I'm not counting them out at all.
So last thing I'll ask before we got to let you go. We talk about it all the time on the sidelines, but I just want the people to know, who do you think is our best chance to go all the way to Chattanooga and win it all?
That's a good question.
It doesn't have to be one team. It could be a handful of teams because all the different regions.
That's a good question. I would probably say Southwind in 6A.
Okay.
They're going to run into Ravenwood or Oakland at some point in the playoffs or in the final, and that's going to be a really tough game. But I think up until that point, I'm confident they can get there. In 2A, I think fairly. They've been to the state semifinals the last 2 years, if not 3 years.
Yeah.
And they've been knocking on the door, and they look great again this year. Big game against Mace this week. Those are probably the two I would look at. I think Melrose is going to be good in 4A. 3A, I should say, but they're going to run into a Westview team or Westview or Covington that's going to be a tough matchup. But I think it would not surprise me if they made it back to Chattanooga again. Those are probably the teams I'm looking at to get to Chattanooga and maybe win it all.
Cool. We're going to hold you to those teams.
He is for real.
All right, let's get people ready before we get you out here. We have a special Thursday edition of the Game of the Week because of the holiday. We're talking about Halloween. Again, we're going to be live out at Germantown for the Germantown and Southwind game for that big game of the week. We do want to say thank you, Wendell, so much for taking the time.
Of course.
Blessing us with that knowledge. And, of course, now everything you said is on record, so I can keep that on record in case you happen to be wrong, which is what I do to him all the time.
He never has any takes. He just be like, you were wrong.
But I'm always right. All right, time for our first break. When we